My family mocked me for losing my job, and then my software exposed secrets that shook everything. They thought I was done for, that losing my job meant losing my worth. What they didn't realize was that I was about to become the headline they couldn't ignore, exposing secrets that would unravel everything they held dear. Family dinners at the Larson estate in Boise had always been more performance than tradition. The polished stage for Ivy League degrees, 7 Figmailmate bonuses, and startup flexes. My name is Ethan Caldwell. I'm 38 now. 3 months ago, I was senior data scientist at Nexlify Solutions, one of the fastest-growing biotech firms in the Northwest. Today, I was the family embarrassment. The cautionary tale everyone politely avoided while trading Pinot Noir's innings. My aunt hissed, her voice carrying across the deck like a stage whisper. Poor guy. Thrown out like yesterday's news. Not everyone's built for the big leagues. I stood by the wooden gazebo near the pool house, listening to my cousin Ava brag about closing a 15-hospital deal and her twin brother Nolan drone on about blockchain disruption. Everyone loved a disruptor, unless he wore a quiet smile and analyzed data sets instead of press releases. Ethan, Nolan called across the deck, his smirk sharp enough to cut glass. We're debating career comebacks. Got any hot tips from the unemployment line? He couldn't resist the dig. And I didn't mind, because while Nolan played angel investor and Ava chased sales quotas, I had spent the last year quietly building something far more powerful and dangerous. How's job hunting, Ethan? Ava asked, swirling her wine, her eyes glinting with mock sympathy. Found a cubicle yet, or are you still licking your wound? I checked my phone. 7:03 p.m. Pacific time. Right about now, Nexlify's internal systems were waking up to the hidden release I'd buried deep in the data pipeline, a compliance protocol that regulators, journalists, and whistleblowers would devour. You know, Nolan said, leaning in with a predatory grin. Real success is about vision, not just playing with numbers in the dark. I smiled, my pulse steady but electric. Oh, I've got vision, Nolan, I said, my voice low and and it's about to light up every newsfeed in the country. And the world was about to see mine in every headline. Let them laugh. The code was already running. All eyes turned, waiting for the so-called family failure to crack. I glanced at my phone again. 7:04 p.m. Let me tell you what really happened at Nexlife Solutions. 3 years ago, I started a personal project. Not some flashy app or blockchain gimmick, but an adaptive AI compliance system built to detect, flag, and evolve against regulatory violations in real time. I named it Sentinel. While my colleagues obsessed over sleek visualizations and VC-pleasing demos, I worked in silence. Brick by brick, algorithms by algorithm, I built something alive. An AI that could learn from infractions, outmaneuver audits, and protect firms like no other. But I wasn't foolish. I'd seen too many data scientists have their work stolen, buried, or resold. So I embedded a hidden verification sequence, a digital signature, dormant unless very specific conditions were met. 3 months ago, Nexlify's new CEO, Claire Vaughn, called me into her corner office. Ethan, she sighed, her voice dripping with condescension as she barely glanced up from her tablet. We're pivoting. The board wants consumer health AI, not your little compliance toy. Your project's dead. It's not just a project. It's the future of regulatory tech. She cut me off, her eyes cold. We've sold the code to a private buyer, Ethan. And you're done here. Pack your desk and get out. I signed the paperwork. Let them think they won. What Claire didn't know was that Sentinel wasn't finished. It was just waiting. And tonight, right as their systems ran a scheduled update, Sentinel would wake and announce its true creator. You should have gone into sales, Ethan, Nolan sneered from the deck, his grin venomous. Maybe then you'd have a shred of relevance. I smirked just as my phone vibrated, breaking former Nexlify scientist tied to revolutionary AI expose. Hava raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. What's that? A job offer from a call center? Not quite, I said, tucking my phone away, my heart pounding with anticipation. Nolan snorted. Pretty sure the clinic's still hiring data entry clerks. Better hurry before they fill up. At least then 7:05 p.m. Pacific time. Somewhere in downtown Seattle, inside Nextlify Solutions' sleek concrete and glass HQ, Claire Vaughn was probably rehearsing her Monday morning media statement. The one where she'd bask in the spotlight of Sentinel, the crown jewel of their innovation pivot. The same Claire Vaughn who once told me, "Real leaders don't analyze data. They buy it." The same Claire Vaughn who sold my life's work without flinching. The same Claire Vaughn who, in about 60 seconds, would find out what happens when you dismiss the so-called obsolete scientist, I said, raising my voice above the soft hum of indie music and clinking glasses, my tone laced with defiance. "Why don't we all check our phones? The show's about to start." Nolan scoffed, his eyes narrowing. "What are you playing at, Ethan? Some pathetic hacker stunt?" Ava rolled her eyes. Across the deck, Liam, the youngest of the Larson cousins, barely 24 and already unbearably smug, snorted. "This better be good, cousin. What's next, a viral TikTok of your sob story?" I didn't answer. I just looked down. 7:06 p.m. My phone buzzed first, then Ava's, then Nolan. One by one, the yard filled with startled tones. Notification banners lit up like fireworks across every screen. Nextlify Solutions stock suspended amidst code authorship scandal. Nolan's grin vanished. Ava's wine glass tilted in her hand. "What the hell is this?" he demanded, his voice cracking with panic. I took a long sip from my glass and smiled, my blood singing with vindication. "It's a little gift from me to Nextliflorn," I said, my voice smooth but razor sharp. "Call it a truth bomb." Sentinel came with a, "Let's call it a digital truth serum." More alerts popped up. FDA freezes $900 million, 0 cents deal pending investigation. Former scientist claims ownership of breakthrough AI. Liam stepped forward, pale now, his bravado crumbling. "Ethan, what did you do?" he whispered, his eyes wide with fear. I set my glass down, pulled out the beat-up laptop I never let go of. "Want a front row seat?" I asked, my gaze locking onto Nolan's. "You love a good pitch, don't you? Here's mine." They leaned in, silent, the air thick with tension. I logged into a secure feed showing Sentinel's verification protocol in motion. Lines of code streamed down the screen, timestamps, cryptographic markers, digital footprints, all tracing the AI's core framework directly back to me. 4 years, 3 months, 12 days. Every line of logic, every sleepless night, all of it mine. I kept my tone steady even as adrenaline surged. That's how long I spent building Sentinel. 4 years. Nights, weekends, holidays. While Claire Vaughn and her so-called visionaries strutted across stages, sipping cocktails at innovation summits, bragging about tech they didn't even understand. Across the deck, Aunt Margaret rose, and Ava's mother gasped as her phone buzzed again. Nextlify Solutions under federal scrutiny for AI ownership fraud. "But they fired you," Liam stammered, his earlier arrogance evaporating. "They owned your work, didn't they? That's how it works." I turned my laptop toward them and pulled up a second window. "Wrong," I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence like a blade. I opened an email thread. Claire Vaughn's breezy approval to experiment with prototype code on their sandbox server. Dated, signed. My was never Nextlify. I built it on my own time, my own machines. They only got a peek because I asked, and Claire signed off, thinking it was nothing. When they sold it to the biotech sector without attribution, they activated the trigger, a passive watchdog that recorded every shady move, every edit, every leak, and waited for the right moment to speak. Nolan leaned closer, his bravado gone, replaced with dawning, dread sense contract. "So that $900 million 0 cents contract, it's all based on stolen tech?" I nodded, my eyes burning with resolve. Claire Vaughn sold a lie. And now the world knows it. And now I held up my phone. "Incoming call. Claire Vaughn." I declined, letting the silence speak louder than words. "But here's the kicker," I said, tapping one last time, my heart racing with the thrill of victory. A window opened, a folder labeled Legal Documentation. Inside, 14 patent certificates, all officially filed under my name, each one covering the core mechanics of Sentinel. Ava's sales polish faded, but her sister Elise's legal brain snapped to life. "You're saying Nexlevi has no claim to any of it?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. I nodded slowly. Every algorithm, every self-auditing compliance layer, every adaptive learning module they pitched to the FDA, it's mine. And Claire's public lies just made my case airtight. Liam was still scrolling furiously, his mouth parted slightly. "Probably," I said, taking another sip from my glass. The taste of triumph sweeter than the wine. Fraud's a lousy business strategy. More phones buzzed. Across the deck, the sound of unraveling reputations was unmistakable. Relatives paced, whispered, tried to hide their screens, but the damage was already done. "Why wait?" Nolan finally choked out, his face ashen. "You had this ace up your sleeve. Why let them humiliate you? Why play the loser?" I thought about all the data scientists who were quietly erased, the researchers whose names were never in the press releases. "Because," I said, my voice low and fierce, "the truth hits harder when it's public, and people like Claire only learn when their empires crumble under the weight of their own lies." My phone buzzed again. A new message preview lit up from Laura Chen, CEO of IBM. Subject: Sentinel. "Impressive integrity layer. Let's discuss over dinner next week." I tilted my screen so Nolan and Ava could see. It. "Looks like my irrelevant skills are in demand," I said, my grin sharp enough to cut through their stunned silence. The sun dipped lower behind my aunt's manicured pines, draping the backyard in gold and silence. And somewhere in downtown Seattle, Claire Vaughn was likely staring into the wreckage of her empire, wondering how it all slipped away. Tomorrow would bring headlines, lawsuits, subpoenas, but tonight belonged to the truth. I stood beneath the amber glow of deck lanterns, watching the expressions on my family's faces shift. It was like a slow-motion domino effect. One by one, the truth finally registering. That real value doesn't come from LinkedIn posts, leased Audis, or inflated startup valuations. Sometimes it comes from silence, from patience, from being the one they all ignored. Sometimes it comes from writing code so elegant, so unbreakable, it didn't need applause. Just timeline. Nolan's phone rang, probably a panic. Ava was furiously thumbing through contacts, already in damage control mode. Liam just stood there, slack-jawed, the shiny world he idolized cracking in real time. I glanced at my watch. 7:30 p.m. Sentinel had done its job. The truth was out, and across Seattle's glowing skyline, a very expensive lesson about underestimating builders, the quiet ones, had officially begun. 2 months later, I sat in IBM's headquarters in Armonk. Laura Chen stood confidently at the front of a sunlit boardroom, wrapping up her presentation. On the screen behind her, Sentinel was live, monitoring IBM's global compliance network, fending off real-time violations with seamless efficiency. "In just 6 weeks," Laura declared, her voice ringing with authority, "Sentinel has neutralized over 4,100 threats, adapted to 22 new violation vectors, and slashed our response window by 89%. The room of skeptical execs was now leaning in, captivated. "You built this alone?" one board member asked, his tone heavy with respect. I nodded. "Nights, weekends, my machines, my capital, every line is mine." "Nextfly only provided test servers," I said, pulling up the signed approval. "And I made sure my IP was protected from day one." Respect followed, finally, on my terms. It was the same testing environment that had allowed me to fine-tune Sentinel's authentication core, the very system that exposed Claire Vaughn's theft to the world. "Well, Mr. Caldwell," Laura Chen said, her smile radiant, "I believe we're ready to make history. Shall we finalize the deal?" The board vote was unanimous. By that evening, the news would hit every major outlet. IBM secures exclusive rights to Sentinel for $3,800,000,000. And me? I'd be stepping in as Chief Innovation Officer, overseeing Sentinel's global rollout, the same platform they once dismissed as too niche. My phone had been buzzing non-stop since the scandal broke. Journalists wanted interviews. Cybersecurity panels wanted keynote speakers. Congressional committees were requesting testimony on tech ownership fraud. But the messages that mattered most came from other data scientists. Hundreds of them. Tales of erased names, stolen patents, 20-hour coding days ending in someone else's press release. Sentinel had grown into more than a platform. It had become a movement, a quiet rebellion against a system built on silencing builders. As I stepped out of IBM's New York campus, my phone rang. I paused. Familiar number. Nolan, I answered, my voice cool but curious. His voice was low, almost broken. Ethan, I'm begging you. Help me. My firm's collapsing. After the Nextlify fallout, Nolan's venture capital firm was under a microscope. Investors were pulling out, his portfolio companies were collapsing, developers were quitting in protest. They're gone, he said, his voice cracking. My team, my investors, everything. I was wrong, Ethan. I didn't see what you were doing. You didn't see, I said, letting the words hang. Because you were too busy chasing clout instead of building something real. I thought of the researchers buried under NDAs, the ones who'd messaged me in the dark. I exhaled and gave a small nod to myself. Send me their names, I said. IBM's scaling. We need people who value code and honor. That evening, I drove past Next Left Solutions' once imposing campus. The lights were mostly out. The lobby sign had already been removed. Bankruptcy filings were underway. Investigations loomed. In the parking lot, a figure waved from under a street lamp. Mia Park, a junior data scientist who had quietly stood by me during the chaos. Ethan Caldwell, she called, her grin infectious. Or do I bow to the new CIO? I chuckled. Ethan's fine, Mia. How about you? Honestly? Thriving, she said, her eyes sparkling. Sentinel's exposé lit a fire. We're organizing, documenting every stolen dataset, every buried credit. She pulled out her phone and showed me a sleek new site. Data scientists from across the industry were uploading their stories, names, timelines, code snippets, all crowdsourced and time-stamped. It's called the Sentinel Pact, she said, her voice brimming with pride. A shield for developers against corporate greed. I stared at the screen. What had begun in my home office was now a global movement. Send me the link, I said. IBM's Ethics Council will want in. My phone buzzed again. A new message from Elise Larson. After the Nextlify meltdown, Microsoft had launched a sweeping review into code attribution across all divisions. Elise, once the rising legal star, had been asked to step down, pending investigation into misrepresentation on several past deals. The silence that followed felt different now. Not emptiness, but justice. Finally catching up. And for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to smile without restraint. I get it now, her message read. Why you chose data science over the spotlight. Power isn't in the applause, it's in building what lasts. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the old laptop on my desk. The same battered machine where Sentinel first came alive. Across continents, Sentinel now protected critical infrastructure, insubdated thousands of compliance violations, and quietly safeguarded entire industries from collapse. But that wasn't its greatest impact. The real legacy was the awakening it ignited. Stronger IP protections, mandatory attribution protocols, and a growing developer rights movement demanding justice for those who actually built the digital future. My phone buzzed again. A message from Liam, the same cousin who'd once cracked jokes about my career reset by the fire pit. Signed up for data science boot camp, he wrote. Will you mentor me, Ethan? I want to build something that matters. I smiled. I'd walked the long road from overlooked scientist to industry transformer, and I knew exactly where he needed to begin. Lesson 1, I replied. Success isn't about the loudest voice. It's about the work you do and the truth you protect. Outside, the Seattle skyline shimmered in the distance. Tomorrow, I'd walk into IBM headquarters as their new Chief Innovation Officer. Next week, I'd testify before Congress on digital ownership and innovation ethics. And tonight I open a new blank file, a fresh project, a new challenge, because the real power in tech doesn't come from headlines, job titles, or billion-dollar deals. It comes from the people willing to stay up late, solve the problems no one else wants to face, and write the code that holds everything together. Every function, every loop, every line. It all tells a story. And mine Mine rewrote the rules. If you've made it this far, this isn't just about me. It's about every builder, every creator who's ever been talked over, written off, or stripped of credit. If you were in my shoes, facing betrayal and dismissal, how would you handle it? Would you fight like I did, turning the tables with your own creation? Or would you choose a different path? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your story, and so does everyone else.